Okay. Let's see how. So I'm going to try to structure this as best as I can. Every time I make a video, it's just kind of on the fly. I'm not a YouTuber by any means. I'm just a guy in my room with all my junk and toys, stuff that I play with, take apart. I wanted to address everything that's been going on lately with the whole KZ fiasco. Talk a little bit about my findings, my thoughts on the matter. I also wanted to give a thank you to Hawaiian Bad Boy, as well as Critical for stepping up, addressing the matter quickly, and also for giving credit for the findings that myself and Delta Fire and Antonio, he goes by the name Across or Across on YouTube. So I'll give a little bit of background first, essentially who I am, what I do, a little bit of my upbringing. So my name's Jeff. I'm in my 30s. I have been into taking things apart ever since I was a little kid. Since the age of 8 years old, one of my first memories as a kid was taking a car ride with my parents. We were on vacation, headed to Tennessee or something like that, and I had a little cassette recorder, and it stopped working on me. So being my little 8-year-old self, I opened it up and took a little, like a toothpick, and just started picking at the insides, and got it to work somehow. Just started working again. And that was like one of my first memories. Growing up, I was an only child, and so also growing up in a poor household, so my parents didn't really have much money. Everything that I owned as a kid growing up was secondhand. My parents worked very hard for what they had. And my dad did paper route. So one of the things that he would do is every Monday and Thursday would be trash day. So he would go out and he worked 2 jobs, by the way. So he'd work his day job full-time, and he worked his nighttime job full-time. He would go out at night and he would scour through the trash looking for odds and ends, electronics and stuff like that. And so he would come to me and say, "Hey, what are you looking for? What do you want me to bring you?" And essentially, those were my toys growing up as a kid. I had other things, I had normal kid toys growing up, but obviously my parents saw passion in me, and they decided to run away with it and try to support me. So I had great parents, by the way. Like, my parents were the best. And so, yeah, I tell them, "Hey, I want a computer," or "I want, a stereo," or if you see some speakers, or, a TV or whatever. I'd tell him what I wanted, and he'd bring it home, and I would tear it apart. I would just dig right into it and just see what was inside it. And that was like just my preoccupation as a child and as a young adult growing up. One of the problems I had as a kid is my parents would have to go through my room. I lived in a converted garage, and so they would have to walk through my room to get to the laundry room. And naturally, as a kid, when you're taking stuff apart, or at least me, I would have circuit boards, and I would have screws and pieces of metal and bits of stuff laying all over the floor. And my dad would walk through my room, and he'd step on a screw, and the first thing I'd hear is, "Jeff, clean up your screws! Get your screws off the floor!" And so that was my childhood. So literally my whole life I've been taking stuff apart. seeing how it works, examining the insides. You can ask anybody I know, anyone I've ever grown up with. They all know me as being the guy that fixes stuff. I fix stuff, I build stuff, I take stuff apart. That is what I do. That is who I am and is intricately woven into my being. So about 2 years ago, right when the epidemic started, I didn't really listen to music much. I did in the past. So another thing I should say is I've had a very heavy background in audio engineering, and I mean, I'm a nerd. I'm like the biggest of nerds. So growing up, I did sound for churches. I did concert events. I worked at a radio station. I did live sound reinforcement for companies that did like tours. I did studio work. I did like recording engineering, all kinds of stuff. So, and that was like another big hobby of mine, was anything audio related, whether it came to mixing, mastering, even making the music creation. I'm familiar with synthesizers and like modular synths and stuff like that. So, like I said, biggest of nerd. You can talk to me all day about any facet of technology, and we could probably talk for hours and hours and hours. So anyway, fast forward to 2020. Things start taking a turn for the worst or whatever. People are not going out as often. And so I decided to start listening to more music. People are in their house at this point. So I started buying IEMs. And I've seen videos on YouTube and stuff, people talking about them. And I knew about them through the recording industry and through like the live sound industry. Because musicians, a lot of times, they use IEMs for their own personal monitoring when they're on stage. And I've had earphones and earbuds, and I've had like over-the-ear or headphones, and I've had not like super expensive headphones, but $200, Sony MDR 7506, 7509, Sennheiser HD 280s, stuff like that. So I knew good sound, and I've experienced good sound. Not to the extent that a lot of people have, $1,000 headphones and stuff like that, but industry standard stuff. And so anyway, I decided to buy a pair of IEMs. I think the first one I ever bought was either the Blonde BL03 or it was the CCA C12. One of those. So, long story short, as soon as I got a hold of them, I became absolutely preoccupied with them. Not really the Blonde, because it didn't fit well. It sounded good, but it didn't fit well, and it was just kind of weird. But I was like, I'll give it another shot. And bought the CCA C12. So the CCA C12 is 5BA 1DD, and I liked it. I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. It was actually Z-Pult that turned me on to that one, and I don't share that sentiment anymore. I don't think it's a good IEM. I've heard much better IEMs, and that is not good to me. But anyway, so like just like everybody, I was introduced to the world of IEMs through one of the budget companies, one of the budget brands. I call them like Hi-Fi ambassadors, because that's essentially what they do. They are the gap between newbies, people that are not familiar with the hobby, and like long-time veterans who know all of it, and who have seen all of it. Like Hawaii Bad Boy and like Crin, like those are industry veterans. They've been around for the entire thing. So I saw these like little metal things inside. And I'm like, well, how do those make sound? Sorry, and you guys got to excuse my hands. the resin, plastic resin, screwed up my hands. Come on. Hello? Will you not focus? Well, anyway, my phone's being lame. But, yeah, so I saw these little things inside the IEM, and I'm like, well, how do those work? What do they do? Like, it's so weird. Like, it sounds different than any other speaker I've heard of, and, you know, I've heard of dynamic drivers, and I've heard of planar drivers, and, you know, so I'm like, okay, you know, some new technology, BA, balanced armature, like, what is this? Like, it's so weird, it's so foreign to me, and it's, like, boxy, and it's metal, like, what is it? It's not a speaker, it's not a normal speaker. So, like, that became an obsession, and, like, every day, like, and I liked the look of them, I thought they looked cool, they fit well, you know, they sounded good enough at the time, they satisfied my needs. And so I decided one day to kind of like get a pair and crack them open. And so fast forward, I'm buying more, and I'm buying other ones. And like the whole time I'm buying more IMs, I'm like, all right, these little metal things like are different. You know, I want to see what they are. And I think the first real IM that I took apart, because it wasn't the C12, was the The Audio Legacy 3. So I moved up the ladder, you know, I bought the blonde, it was like $30. I bought the C12, it was like $50. And then I stepped up and up and up and up, and I got the Legacy 3, which was like $130. And I thought they were the coolest looking thing, they were so beautiful. Loved the cable, like, I was like, man, and they sound good. Like, you know, the quality of sound is stepping up, and it's just, like, I don't know, it's like this fantastic journey. I just fell in love with it. And so finally one day I'm like, you know what? I'm going to open these up. I want to see what's inside. I want to make my own. And at that point, I looked up online, like, how the balanced armatures work, and, like, still kind of couldn't wrap my head around it. But yeah, so I ended up taking them apart, and I took all the guts out, and I tried to make something else with them, but I completely failed. And this is actually, it's getting ready to go on about a year now since I opened up my first IM and even got into this. So a lot of stuff has happened in 1 year's time. Okay. So yeah, so just like anybody else, one of my first IMs was KZ. So where does this bring us to now? Obviously, it has spiraled out of control. Like, IMs are my life. And every day I try to become more familiar with them, or just create things. I make my own DIY IMs. In fact, the ones that I'm actually wearing right now, if I can take them off, I just made these last night. So, can't even see it. A stupid phone. So I just made these last night, and they're not they're not quite finished. But yeah, the shell is molded. It's a copy of another shell. So, but I did make them by hand. I used molds. I didn't print them. I used 3D printer resin. And basically they have one LCP driver, 2 BA, and 2 EST in each. And I have not tuned them yet, but they sound good enough that I don't really need to tune them. I will tune them, I'll make them sound better. But anyway, so this is where we've come. And so one day I was approached by KZ, and they were like, hey, do you want to review one of our IMs? And let me make one thing clear. This is not a cheap hobby. It's an expensive hobby. A lot of people are not willing to shell out money for this kind of stuff unless you're insane or you're like me. You know, like $300 for a pair of earphones, you know, $1,000 for a pair of earphones. You tell most people that, they're going to be like, you're crazy. Like, why would you do that? And then you tell them, oh, but it sounds really, really good. And they're like, well, yeah, but I can buy a $10 pair of Sonys at Walmart and they sound just as good to me. You know, I don't get what your malfunction is. So anyway, anywhere, you know, you can save $1 or $2, it helps. So they were like, yeah, you know, we'll send you a pair of IAMs. All you got to do is review them. And also another thing is they never asked me how to review them. They never asked for a good review. The only reason why I reviewed them as being good is because I genuinely thought they were good. Okay? And so they sent me one. I gave it a good review, and they were just like, yeah, do you want to hear another one? I'm like, yeah, sure. And that was pretty much the extent of our conversation. They just approached me one day, and they'd be like, hey, do you want to try this? And I'm, sure. And they were the only company that did so. There weren't other companies sending me stuff, you know? And it's something that I wouldn't have been able to try anyways if they hadn't sent it to me, because I'm not going to spend my own money on it. I'm going to spend money on things that I want to spend money on. And that's just not one of them. So I start, and meanwhile, during this whole time, like, I'm taking stuff apart on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, I'll start making YouTube videos. So I start making videos, tearing stuff apart, like showing people, and you guys have seen, there are not very many videos on here. I try to stay humble, I try to stay modest. I'm not in it for fame, I'm not in it for recognition, I'm not trying to get something out of this. This is what I genuinely love to do. I love to take stuff apart, I love to build stuff, and I love music, and these caught my fancy. So I started tearing apart some of the KZ IMs and highlighting some of the technology inside. So, for example, here we have, and I really wish I could get this phone to, oh yeah, now you focus. You fucker. So this is the DQ6. This is, in fact, the DQ6S. And so what I would do is, you know, I'd take the back plate off, and I'd be like, oh, well, it's got 2 dynamic in there, and, you know, it's got a third larger dynamic, and, you know, the smaller ones make the sound. And it's like, they're giving you the marketing materials, like, they're the ones marketing it, so you're taking it at face value that's, you know, what's in there, that's what it does. You know, I never thought to, like, really test it much further, but then curiosity got the best of me, and this is before any of this even happened. And so I'm like, well, I wonder what those little DDs sound like. You know, I should disconnect the big one and see what those do, because there's a crossover. I mean, all the parts are here. This is in all intensive purposes, this is a fully functional IEM, if it weren't for 2 major flaws. So anyway, I disconnect the main driver, and I'm like, there's nothing playing. I can't hear anything. Why can't I hear anything? So, and granted, I bought them with my own money. These were not provided to me from KZ. Now, this pair was, but the pair that I originally took apart, I bought with my own money. And so I took it apart, disconnected it, couldn't find any sound, so I just ripped the driver out, and this one actually comes out. I just haven't pulled it out right now. Actually, you know what? Here, let me just show you guys, because I'm sure people are dying to see this. Alright. So, let's see if we can focus in on this. So, part of this design, so the driver sits in this larger housing here. There's this little tube. Let me see. I'll point it out to you guys. So there's this little, you see that little entrance down there? So that little entrance leads into this tube, and this tube leads up to these 2 drivers. Okay? This little entrance right here was completely blocked with glue. I had to scrape the glue out of it. So there's no way for the sound to physically travel across this barrier here. And then secondly, you can see these drivers are wired up straight into the plug. So I'm like, okay, well, I got the glue out, so they should make sound now, right? Like, you think naturally they would make sound. So I plug them in, and I cranked them, and no sound came out. Nothing. Not a peep, not a whisper. I put my ear up to the back of the drivers. Couldn't hear anything. It's complete dead silence. What happened, and what KZ did, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but they had wired these up in series. But when they wired them up in series, they wired them in reverse polarity. So one is firing like this, up and down. Meanwhile, the other one is firing down and up. So they are literally canceling each other out. Okay? So not only can the sound not travel through this tube here, but these can't physically make noise because they're canceling each other out. They're in a pressurized vessel here. Okay, and even when you remove the pressure and sound's allowed to flow, when one is making an excursion, the other one is inverted. So the pressure stays the same in the chamber here. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just like in your car. Like if you have two subs in your car and you accidentally invert one, you're not going to hear any bass. Nothing's going to come out. I mean, you might hear a little bit because there's like resonances and stuff. But anyway, long story short, I was like, well, that's so weird. And I didn't even realize they were wired up that way. I was just like, well, let me disconnect them and I'll wire them up in parallel. So I did that, and boom, instantly, sound. It was like clear as day. You know, they made crystal clear sound. Now, I haven't gone through the hassle of reconnecting this all together. So many people have asked me, well, what does it sound like when you put it all back together, you know, or when it's supposed to play the way that it is? I don't know. I haven't done it yet. I only have a finite amount of time, so I haven't been able to get to it yet. I might do it, I don't know, within the next couple days or so. I have obligations that I need to take care of. I'm in the process of building IEMs for friends and stuff, and I only have a couple days off before I got to return to work. But anyway, so that's where it led us. So once I discovered that, I posted it on Facebook, and I started talking to my relative nerd buddies, Across, and I posted it. I don't think I really talked to Delta about it, but yeah. So I posted about it, and I was talking to a couple friends, and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't make any sound. Like the small drivers don't make any sound. And I didn't really think anything of it. I'm like, it's all there. Like, they all work. I'm like, maybe I just got a defective pair. You know? Like, that's a sample size of one in how many? And then all of a sudden, Across makes his video. Same thing. And then Delta makes his video on the CRN. And he's like, hey, there's no change when I disconnect the BAs, the BA and the magnetostat. And I'm like, well, hey, dude, I don't know if you saw, but the DQ6 doesn't make any sound when I disconnect the larger driver. And so he does the same thing, and same thing, no change. So now you got a sample size of what, 3, 4? So the first one I did was the original DQ6. And then so I did it to the DQ6S. And it was the same thing. Glue, wired up the same way. But all the stuff is there. It's all real stuff. Like, they're real speakers. Like these are not fake speakers. These make sound. Okay? So those make sound. Like, that's real wire. That's industry standard IEM wire. This is the same wire that I have right here. Okay, so it's like, all right, well, why are they putting all this cost of materials in here for an IM that's just one dynamic driver? Was it an issue with the tuning? Did they just not realize? Was it an oversight? Well, I'm not going to make any presumptions. That's not my place, okay? It's KZ's responsibility to say something about it. It's not my responsibility to guess for them what their intentions were behind this, if it was an accident or if it was malice. But so that's that. And then, so I'm kind of mixing the timeline up here a little bit. It didn't all happen like that. There's also other IMs that I was taking apart and stuff. And like I said, at the beginning, I didn't really think about it much. I just thought maybe I just had a defective IM. So I started taking apart more IMs and more IMs. And then I got to... No, that's another one. Sorry, give me 1 second. So I get to this. This is the Zex. Still jumping around in timelines a little bit. But, yeah, there's... Everything's real here. Everything's real. Everything plays. The magnetostat plays. It's a high resistance device. Like, it's a low power device. So it's not going to make a lot of sound. It's not really going to appear up on a graph when you unplug it. But when I unplugged, so I disconnected the dynamic driver, and they made sound. So they're real. So there's nothing wrong with these. These are fine. Okay? I don't know how many of KZ's IMs work or do not work, or to what extent they do work, but this one's fine. Okay? So this is the ZEX. This is fine. The NRA, same thing, fine. There's nothing wrong with those IMs. There's no lies or magic or whatever going on. It's just the limitations of the technology. Okay? And then, sorry, give me 1 second. Let me try to find. So then we got this. This is the new ZES. Okay? I haven't tested this one yet, but this is literally the same components except a larger dynamic driver. I don't want to ruin these drivers because I haven't tested them yet, but there's not much that can go wrong with this design, and I can actually show you. I don't have them up here. I should have prepared for this. I'm just kind of making this video off the cuff because things have gotten a little out of control the last few days. But yeah, so those IMs, like the simple magnetostat and dynamic driver, those are fine. I challenge anyone to test them and see if they're fake. I promise you they're not fake. I actually have, I gotta find it. I actually have the drivers here that KZ is using. And these are genuine drivers. They're not genuine Korean drivers. So the original driver that this was based on was a driver out of Korea, I believe, by the company TDK. Okay? And this is a little magnetostat driver. It operates on like a piezo effect. I don't know, something like that. But yeah, so this is the driver. This came out of my NRA. And this thing works. It's not fake. There's nothing fake about it. It makes sound. It works exactly how they said it does. But then we get to this. Alright. No, sorry, wrong one. Sorry guys, I'm so unprepared. Where the fudge are you? Hold on, I'm just going to pause the video for a second. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Alright, I had to make another one because I don't know what I did with the other one. I can't find it anywhere. So, you guys are familiar with the CRN, right? The Zex Pro, the CRN. Okay, this is it, right here. In a nutshell, this is what it looks like. Okay. So after seeing Delta's post, because he's the one that really took this off, like he's the one that went running with this whole thing. Let me So anyway, naturally, I like to study things. I like to know how they work, and I also like to back up any data that I find. Like if somebody says that something is some way, or they make a claim about something, like I want to double check it. I want to look into it. I just want to know that it's true. So here's the CRN. You can see kind of by the front, little magnetostat driver, a little BA in there. Okay, so this is real. This is all real. All of this is real. The BA is real. The driver's real. The magnetostat in the front is real. This all works. All of this works. But what's the big problem with this one? So we already know about the DQ6 and the DQ6S, which happen to be a collab model. Now this is where the problem comes from, right here. These two IMs. Okay, I'm sure there are more, but these are the two big ones, and this is where the problem comes from. This is where it stems. So you do a collaboration with someone, you make a product like Hawaii Bad Boy said, this is over a year old now, and the entire time in your marketing, you got all this about how, it makes great sound, and the drivers combine and do this, and da-da-da-da-da, when it's all bullshit. And then, so now you sell a shit ton of units, and then it comes out that half of the crap doesn't work. So I understand why they're upset. And props to them for coming out with it. And saying something. KZ hasn't said a word yet. And they probably think that they're in the right. KZ is probably sitting there scratching their head going, well, what? Everything's real. We don't understand, But what they fail to grasp is that half of it is not functional. People are not getting what they're paid for. If somebody wanted to enjoy the sound of the DQ6, all they would have to do is buy a single DD and pay half the price instead of paying, $32 or whatever it is for all this wasted material. This is all waste. It's not being used. It's not functional. It's real, but it's not being used. So there's that one. And then, so back to the CRN. So here's the issue with this one. Everything is real. There's no glue blocking anything. Everything is fine. Everything is dandy. All the drivers are real. Okay. Here's where we get to the bad part. All right. Is this little guy right here. This little crossover. This little crossover network. So I decided to break out my multimeter and start measuring. Okay. I don't know the impedance of all these devices. I could get into all the technicals of it, but I really don't care. I'm not bothered enough to do that. If somebody else wants to take over, they can do it, but I've already made my findings. So there's 26 ohms of resistance on this network right here, this frequency divider, from the magnetostat to the power. Okay, there is 35 ohm impedance in this frequency divider that go from the BA to power, and then there is a giant 0 ohm jumper right in the middle for the dynamic driver. At least I assume so, because that's what I measured. Well, that being said, there is not absolutely, but there is close to no sound coming from either the BA or the magnetostat. There's very, very little. I mean, very little. Tiny, tiny bit of sound. So basically, the majority of what you're hearing is this single dynamic here. The rest of the sound from this BA and this magnetostat is... See, I go back and forth with myself, like, well, does it really add to it? Is it really not that critical? But, like, then I hear it, and I'm like, no, that's like nothing. That's like hardly any sound whatsoever. But yeah, they basically dampened the high side drivers, the BA and the magnetostat to the point where they're almost inaudible. Like during normal listening volumes, you're not hearing any of that. So you have all this stuff that's in here when none of it really makes a difference. And the graphs back it up. When Delta made a graph and he disconnected these, there was no change in sound. And then I went and did the opposite. So that's where we are with this one. And I could do more testing. Frankly, I don't really care about this stuff enough to be bothered. Like, I have better things to do than take apart people's KZ IMs every day. You know, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to like come down on anyone or like be a mean person, but it's just the truth. And it's funny, so like in my last video I even put in the title and probably last review. That was before I even saw any of the stuff that Delta posted. That's before any of this stuff even like happened. Any of like Crin's response, HBB's response. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to move on with my channel and do other stuff. I wanted to cover other IMs and take apart other IMs and talk about the devices themselves and how they measure and kind of the theory behind them and what we're actually hearing, what we're not hearing, and kind of have a dialogue about more of the technical side of it. And but then it just so happened to play out that all that stuff happened, and then let's see, and then here we are today with everybody boycotting KZ, which I'm perfectly fine with. Like, I understand. Like, if you buy something, you expect it to be a certain way. If it's advertised a certain way, like, you want it to be that thing. Like, especially in the case of the DQ6. Like, that's the biggest sin. Because you're not hearing those at all. Like, these are completely worthless. Those are worthless. Like, you could rip them off the IM and just have that, and it would sound exactly the same. It would sound no different, you know. And so anybody who's trying to come down on the reviewers for doing a collab and saying, oh, well, they had to know about it, you know, if there is anybody, I don't know if there is, but if there's anybody that's saying, oh, well, they had to know about it, I mean, they're the ones that tuned it after all, right? That's not how it works. Basically, the company sends the IM to the reviewer and they say, okay, what do you think? And then the reviewer goes, oh, I want this changed, I want that changed, you know, lower the bass a little bit, da-da-da-da-da, and they go back and forth. Now, in Hawaii Bad Boy's case, I think it was a little bit more involved, because I think he might have, I know he likes to play around with dynamic drivers, so I think he changed out the filters, and then he went to KZ and said, hey, I don't know if that's the case, but that's just my assumption. But yeah, but like, that's how it works naturally. They're not soldering it themselves and building it and constructing it and then turning the design into the company. That's not what they do. They're not creating the IM, they're just tuning it. So they're saying, oh, well, yeah, I want to hear more bass within the limitations of the design. Every IM design has its limitations. It starts at the base, it starts at the roots. The roots are the drivers that you put inside. So what it has inside it gives it the limitations of how it's going to sound. There's a little bit of play, there's a little bit of wiggle room when you're tuning an IM. But the problem is once you make one adjustment, it changes other things. So it's a delicate balance. It's a whole technical world. I mean, I could go into detail talking about it, but we'd be here all day. So let me try to, yeah, here we go. All right. So I made sure that I put it front and center so you guys could see this, because I want to share this data with you. This is what I found, and then you guys can make your own judgments about it. Also, this is the ZAS, the ZAS, as well as the CA16 Pro. So I disconnected the DD and just had all the BA playing, and then I bypassed them. This is kind of more the same. When the crossover's in there, you're not really hearing much. You are hearing more, so this isn't as bad as the CRN. This one's way worse. This one's not so bad, or it's not as bad, but it's still the same. You're you're hearing probably 80% dynamic driver, and if that, 80 to 90% dynamic driver, and the rest is the BA. So small percentage is everything else. But here, let me move you guys real quick, and I'll show you what I got. All right, so here are my measurements. This is the CRN. So when you remove the DD, this is what you get right here. All right, this little section, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine, but it's the scale that it's at that's the problem. Okay, we're up at 80 dB. And now, you can't really trust these things. You can't just trust measurements. You got to use your ears as well. So I used my ears, and yeah, there's not very much there. There's stuff there, but it's not a lot. This is what was this? Oh, yeah, this was the ZAS and the CA16. So you can see there's a little bit more here. So they are doing stuff with the BAs. Like, there's stuff going on there. They're not hiding anything. They're not lying about it. This is tuning. Sometimes you use a little of the drivers. Sometimes you use a lot. That's just the way it goes. In their case, with the CRN and the DQ6, they're using a little bit and none. So yeah, so there's that. And then, what was this? Okay, so I was like, okay, well, what do the drivers make on their own when they're not going through the crossover or any of that, when there's no resistance added? Like, what is the pure sound of those drivers through the nozzle with nothing impeding it? Like, the best possible chance they have of playing. And it's fine. There's nothing wrong here. There's a little bit of bass roll off because these are BA. These are not meant to run the whole gamut. I believe this is the CRN. But yeah, so that's what you get with that one. All right, this is the ZES and the CA16 Pro. Same thing. You get what you get. You're going to get a squiggly, weird-looking wave. But that's what happens when you disconnect the crossover. This is the NRA/ZEX, the original. Now this is with the dynamic removed and just that magnetostat. Okay, so it's doing its job. It's fine. Everything's fine. And then we notice we start getting into some really weird measurements. I'm actually going to delete that one because we don't need that one. But yeah, then we have this, and there's just nothing across the board. This is the DQ6. This is what those drivers put out when nothing else, and it's just noise. This is background noise. This is my air conditioner. So there's nothing there. There's just nothing there. And now, when I remove the clog, when I remove the glue, and I rewire the drivers up how they're supposed to be. Now, there's no crossover in here, but this is what it gave me. So everything's there. Everything is there for the DQ6 to make sound. Like, all they have to do is get rid of the glue and rewire the drivers. So they're not in series, and you don't have one wired up backwards. You don't have them wired up out of phase. You have them both playing in phase, and then you're fine. So, I hope you guys can kind of understand what all that means. Whether or not any of it is, malice or greed, KZ just trying to sell more units. I mean, I've been in this hobby for 2 years now. I haven't seen as much as some of the veterans have. I don't agree with it, and my disagreement of it is more of a wasting of materials. Like, I'm thinking about it from like a hippie aspect. It's like, why would you put all that stuff in there if it's not being used? Like, because with most of these IMs, honestly, they could just tune a single DD and get the same sound. You know, it might be a little bit different, you know, because like I said, there is a blend with most of them, like the CRN, the Zest, the CA16, like those two IMs. Most of that is fine. You know, you don't have to use all of the animal, you know, when you're cooking a meal. Like, it's fine just to use a little bit. Like, when you're tuning stuff, you're not going to have every driver playing at full blast. It's not like a speaker, you know. It's a different principle. But anyway, with that being said, I think people need to like just chill out a little bit. I know some people are upset, and it's fine. Be upset at KZ. But here's the thing that I see that makes me unhappy with this hobby, or some of the people in this hobby, is when people go out and they start doing witch hunts. Okay? Not every company is evil. Not every company has bad intentions. Not every company is trying to lie to you or cheat you. Okay? There are a select few instances where that is true. Okay? And it's perfectly fine to be upset about it. And it's perfectly fine to demand your money back or demand some sort of resolution. That is naturally how commerce works. When you're dealing with a company and you have a business relationship, you know, between company and consumer, that's the way it should be. It's just like Hawaii Bad Boy says. You take the feedback, you ingest it, you spit out the new thing with the feedback taken, you integrate the feedback, and you deliver it on a plate to your consumers, and you say, here we go, I'm sorry, here's what you wanted, and then you go from there. And this is every industry. There's always a back and forth, you know. Did KZ get a little bit greedy? Yeah, I think they did. I think they got a little greedy. Do I think they're entirely at fault? No. No, I don't. And that's not me siding with KZ. That is my honest opinion. Being in this industry, having countless IMs around me. I mean, God, I probably owned 100 so far. So, all I can say is, don't go looking for trouble, or you're going to find trouble. Like, there are people out there who want to make anyone an enemy, and we don't need that in the community. It's not a good look. You're going to drive people away. I've already been talking to people that have been like, dude, this stuff's getting out of hand. I just want to enjoy my music, you know? So, that is my piece. That is what I have to say. If you buy something and you like it, you like it. It's another thing. See, Hawaii Bad Boy, he's full of good proverbs. Some people may not agree with him, but he's got good information. He's got good things to tell you. And one of the things that he says all the time is, what you like is what's good. You like what's good. What you like is good. It's not what other people like. It's what you like. If you like it, then it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you don't like it, then it's not good. Plain and simple. It's easy. So, anyway, if you know, I might do more investigations. I might look into more stuff. I don't even want to call it investigation. I'm not investigating nothing. I take stuff apart for fun because it's what I like to do. That's just who I am. I like to take stuff apart and see how it works. And I will always tell you guys the truth. If there's something that I come across that I think isn't right, I'm going to let you know. And in this case, yeah, I think KZ, one of the reasons why this blew up as big as it did is the way that KZ mishandled it. They need to come out and they need to say something. They don't need to hire a bot army. They don't need to keep silent and think that people are going to like kill them if they don't. Like, people want an answer. They want to know, was it an accident? Did you do it accidentally? Was it just part of the tuning process? Was it an oversight? You know, is it a QC issue? Like, people just want to know. So if KZ's watching this, I hope that they can get enough clue to come out and tell them what's going on. Like, that's all you got to do is fess up, say, hey, sorry, we made a boo-boo. You know, what can we do to make things better? And, oh, by the way, yeah, this is what we think happened. This is what happened. You know? Sorry, it's like early in the morning and I'm tired. But I hope I'm not coming across as a dick, because I'm not. I'm just trying to sympathize with people here and trying to empathize. But yeah, trying to think what else I have to say. You know what? I feel bad for Hawaii Bad Boy, and I feel bad for Critical. And people are gonna say, "Well, why? Why do you feel bad for him? They got a bunch of brand deals and stuff, and they got this and that." Well, because it's their reputation on the line. Like, when you do business with a company, that is what happens. And when a company fucks up, now it falls onto you to be the mediator. You know what I mean? You got to apologize for the company's misdoings. It wasn't their fault that this stuff happened. It wasn't their fault that half the stuff ended up not being true or not working how people thought it worked. You know? But yeah, I think a lot of it just got blown out of proportion. And like I said, there doesn't need to be a witch hunt. We don't need any of that in this community. Like, take that shit and go. People that are claiming to know about IAMs and take them apart and all that stuff. If you know your stuff, provide the facts, put it out plainly, do like I do like Delta does, provide graphs, talk about it a little bit. Do not make accusations until you know what you're talking about. And then once you know what you're talking about, then make accusations. Make them all day, because you know it's the truth. That's the great thing about taking stuff apart, is you learn the truth. You learn how it really works. It's a desire to know. It's a desire for knowledge. And that's what I desire to do. I want to learn things. I want to grow from it, and I want to understand how things really work. Or else I wouldn't be doing what I do. Like, it is the quest for knowledge. That is exactly why I do what I do. I want to see it. I want to experience it in person, and I want to know more about it. I want to understand how it functions and how it works. But anyway, with that being said, I hope everyone has a great day. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I appreciate you taking the time to watch any of my videos. Like I was already going to make a video of. I was already going to make one saying that I didn't want this to be a KZ channel. I don't want this to be all KZ reviews. The only reason why I have as many as I do on this channel is because they were the only person that sent me stuff for free. Okay? And not maybe half to 3/4 of the stuff that they sent me was the stuff that they sent me. The rest was stuff that I bought with my own money. And I would have given the same opinion regardless. So I'll probably just delete those videos anyway, because everybody's so angry with them right now, which is justified. I understand it. But it's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's just people like quick to call names and stuff right now and go back and forth and flame war. It's just a whole flame war. But, alright guys, have a good night.